Oh my goodness. Well, I had to re-record this, and finally, after 2 days of retrying this, a bit of setup tweaks, and finally we got to a good point here. Still mess it up a little bit, just was a little bit nervous at the end there. As you saw coming out of the last corner, we messed up the entry and the exit. But nevertheless, I think we had a good lesson here. Always save your recordings in at least one or two more places so that you don't accidentally delete the recording like I did. And hopefully now I'm just checking OBS. Yes, I am recording, and hopefully this goes uncorrupted. So let's get back into the garage real quick and take a look at the setup first. If you want to be, taking a look at the what you call it, the setup, the track guide, so it's going to be around 9 minutes onwards, 8 minutes onwards, so you can skip to that using the timestamps below. And for now, let's get into the setup. So Spa, sector 1 and sector 3, all long straights. You're going to be needing as much top speed as you can get around here, and that's also going to help you to, with lower wings, going to help you to recover more ERS throughout the race. So even 1 or 2% more per lap makes up about 20%, 30%, 40% over a stint of 10-15 laps. So you got to play smart here around here with the battery. Excuse me. Now it is possible to go lower than 13-11 wings around here, but I feel like in the race conditions, once again, in this year's game, there's not too much emphasis on top speed here, whereas if you have a bit of downforce, it's going to help you out with your tire wear, and also getting a lot of pace out of sector 2. So I've adjusted my setup. Previously was 11-11, but I found a bit more pace with a bit more front wing in the corners, obviously, right? And a lot of setup changes, just minor tweaks in the suspension page to accommodate for this extra twitchiness in the car with the extra wings. So you can always go a bit higher, 1 or 2 clicks higher if you need it for qualifying to get the car to perform a bit better. Sometimes you may feel like you want to actually go lower on the soft tires, because the soft tires give you a lot more grip in qualifying. So it's up to you. You can stick with this, or you can just adjust it slightly. Now transmission, well, the usual 55 on throttle. I think I used 50 like throughout the lap in sector 2 onwards, where there's a lot of high speed corners. I only do that for qualifying because you need to get the maximum rotation out of the tires, and soft tires, they give you a lot of grip around here. So just for qualifying, 50% on throttle is good enough. Be careful when you're accelerating out of the slower corners like turn 1 and the last chicane, the bus stop chicane, because when you go on curbs coming out of slower corners, when you're accelerating on curbs, you want a little bit higher on throttle so that you don't over rev, the car doesn't go into a crazy spin kind of thing, right? And off throttle here, pretty high, considering 54 is still on the lower side of things. 54 is still a little bit safe here. 53, 54 is on the safer side, because when you tend to break into the last chicane, the bus stop chicane, and turn 1, and even end of Lecombe, end of the first sector, these heavy braking zones, and pretty much throughout the track where you have heavy brakings, it tends to it has a handbrake effect kind of thing, where if you brake too much or too little, even sometimes the rear tends to snap away no matter whatever you do to the brake bias. So having a little bit off throttle helps to not lock up the rears in some way, and also keeps the car a lot more stable and planted when you go into those high speed corners where you have to quickly change directions as well. Otherwise, if you're fine with 50, go with it. And for the race, go up to 55. I'm going up to 55 because that felt a lot more better in the race. But up to you. If you want a lot more stability, you can go 55. Don't go higher than that, because then you're really starting to lose performance in the car. Suspension geometry, the usual minimum camber and minimum toe is the easiest way to set up your car in this game, and it's almost as quick as any other suspension setup that you may find out there. So this is probably the quickest in most tracks, or some tracks you may find there's a bit more performance if you adjust the front toe and camber and rear toe or whatever, all this stuff. You can find a bit more performance here and there, but it's going to come down to how can you control the car really. Probably at the top 0.5% of the world, they might find a benefit, whereas regular plebs like me and you, we probably don't even get any benefit from running other than this. Either way, if you find something good, go for it. And maybe a bit of rear toe around here, 1 or 2 clicks will help, because it's such a low downforce track and you need a lot of high speed grip, so this can actually help you in the corners. Suspension, the magical suspension always. So 41 full stiffness on the front, no secret here, because you want all that stability that you can get. And given that it's quite a high low downforce circuit with a lot of high speed corners, so you need to get some mechanical balance in your car. There's not enough aero to give you that, so suspension is the way to go. And it also gives the car a lot more predictable on stiff suspension like this, so go for it. Maybe 2 or 3 clicks lower might be needed if you feel like you need a bit more turn in, but don't go any lower than that. Then it starts to really unbalance the car. Even 2 or 3 clicks lower than that, you really start to feel the difference around here. And rear suspension at 11, relatively soft, I'll say, for more setups here. Anywhere from 1 until I'd say 11, 15 is still considered to be soft. Beyond that, you're going into the stiff level of suspension, so you want it a bit on the higher side, on the low end, I say. You want it around 11, 12, maybe 10, just so the rear rotates a lot more in the corners, in the high speed corners. This will help the car to be a lot more stable as well, so it does not bottom out when you're trying to accelerate quite hard. Now, you don't want to go too high either, because when you start going too high, the rear moves a lot more in corners, and coming out of slower corners, you'll notice that the car is very twitchy and very snappy. So it's a bit of a bargaining thing that you have, trade-off that you have to do in your setup. If you want more rotation, try maybe 1 or 2 clicks at first. If you're not happy with that, just go back to the usual and it will probably be happy. And to complement this suspension setup here, I've gone with 33, 37 ride height around here. 32 is also possible actually in Spa, but the only problem is in the top speed section, where the back straight and also the camel straight, you tend to bottom out just a little bit, and that actually kind of ruins your top speed, especially if you're in DRS of someone, in the toe of someone. You're gaining more speed and you may actually start to lose a bit of top speed. And going into sector 2, where there's a lot of curves that you have to mount to be quick to gain lap time. Going a bit lower, I don't feel there was any performance to be offered there. When I went up to 33, instantly the car was a lot more responsive on the curbs, so that's good enough. You can go 34 as well, that will be really clear off the curbs, but 33 I think is like the lowest you should go. And 37 ride height is just to complement the rear suspension. As always, the lower you go on the suspension, front and rear, the higher you should go on the ride height, just so the car has enough ground clearance. Softer suspension means the car will squat much easily to the ground, so you need to make sure if your suspension is somewhat like this, the ride height 33, 37 should be just nice. And if you go higher, you can get a lot more rotation in slow speed and high speed, but you may notice the car will be a bit twitchy as well. If that happens, you can try to tweak around your rear suspension and see if that helps to reduce the twitchiness. If it does, well, congrats, you're a setup master now. And finally, anti-roll bars. One on the rear is crucial in any track to make sure the rear does not turn too much and the rear does not snap on exit. In high speed, yes, if you go higher on the rear anti-roll bar, it gives you a lot more cornering performance without actually trying to spin the car in high speed. But coming out of corners, maybe on the exits, you may notice the car will be a bit more twitchy. So leave it at 1, that's okay. On the front, quite recently, for past few setups, you notice I'm going on the lower side of the front suspension, front anti-roll bar on 1, because it keeps the car quite pointy on the entry. It does not make it too stiff. Either way, I'm not really noticing like difference between 1 and 21. So why not just give the car more rotation, right? And make sure the car is as balanced as possible. So if you feel that the car needs a lot more stability, especially on like corner exits, you need to induce a bit of understeer to make the car a bit stable on exits. You can increase the anti-roll bar. Try 2 clicks at a time, maybe 1, maybe 3, whichever you feel comfortable. Brakes, 100% pressure, no question about this as always. 56, brake bias will be okay for the whole track in qualifying as well. In turn 1, you did notice, for time trial at least, and in qualifying, I use 54 just to get the car a lot more rotated in at the hairpin, and that gains a lot of time on the entry. Just for qualifying. In the race, it doesn't really matter if you go 55, 56 or 57. The car is a lot more stable in those sense. So 57 for the whole track works just nicely. 56 also works just nicely, especially for the last corner, the bus stop chicane. You want it a bit higher so you don't lock up into the chicane. So, and trail brake nicely into the corner as well. So 56, 57 just works nice around there. Everywhere else you can get as low as 54, sometimes 53 in some corners, but you don't want to risk it because you're braking and turning quite a lot in high speed corners and you're having low downforce. So yeah, keep it safe around 54, you'll be fine. And tire pressures, tweaked it a little bit as well, just to give a little bit more grip in the corners. And yeah, 22.7, 7 clicks on the front, 20.4, 4 clicks on the rear basically. And this is just okay. The tires do not overheat in any condition. If you feel they are still overheating, you can always go down to minimum tire pressures first and then work your way upwards. If they're too cold, the carcass temperature is too cold, and you can go higher. That's not a problem. In fact, going higher is usually recommended for high speed corners, high speed tracks, because it adds to the stability of the car and responsiveness of the car. But you don't want too much, otherwise you start to wear out the tires quite a bit with too much pressure. So there we go. The setup will be in the description as well, and in my Discord channel if you want to follow. There's a setup board which you can come and see all the setups once again, and the setups will be updated from time to time whenever we find new updates or whatever. I say we because the community also contributes to this setup, so come and join us. See you there. And now let's get into the track guide for Spa. So while we're loading, as usual, before you start a hot lap, you need to make sure you get a good exit out of any corner, out of the last corner here. So you'll be able to see that, well, in the replay here you can't really see, but I'm taking a wider line here to start my lap, so that you gain that a little bit more momentum onto the straight. So comparing this to, like, if you just take the normal racing line to the wide line here before you start a lap, even in real life they do this. So you carry a bit more speed into first corner, you can gain up to half a tenth actually if you nail this. Even if you don't nail this, you get a little bit of wheel spin and whatnot, because there's, in the game, quite funnily, there's no grip on the offline. So yeah, even if you don't nail this perfectly, you still gain time into turn 1. So you definitely want to be taking this wider line for your qualifying laps. And even for in the race, you don't really need to do this, because you're going to be losing time actually, because you lose a lot of time if you take a wider line to follow someone. Now DRS open, your starting line is right around here, and you want to bring your car over to the left hand side, and your braking reference for turn 1 is going to be just as you pass this white line on the ground or the 100-meter board. So these are the two most solid references that you have. And yeah, you can brake right at the 100-meter, right at the white line, or just slightly after it. I just brake right as I hit the white line, and it takes a bit of practice to see the apex. It's kind of blind from here, but it gets clear as you approach it. So initially you want to be braking in 100% full brakes here, down to third gear here. So down to fourth, and then down to third for the apex. And then you can see the car is just a little bit sliding here. If you take a look back here, the car is just sort of like locking the rears a little bit just to get it rotated. And that's actually a useful trick that you can use in any track, especially to get the car turned in a little bit quicker, but not too much. So tight on the apex, but avoid the inside curve. As you can see, it kind of unsettles the car. The track is quite cambered inwards. Yeah, so you don't want to take too much of the inside line. And in the race, you can take a bit of a rounded line around the outside if you want to try to line up and overtake on someone. But generally you want to follow the normal racing line, because that has the most grip in the game. Stupid rules, but you got to make use of what you have. And back on board, on the exit you can take quite a bit of the curb here on the exit. Make sure your steering is as straight as possible before you start to accelerate on the curb. And in time trial and qualifying, it's a bit sketchy because you have hot lap enabled. It tends to spin a little bit more, so you have to be a lot more gentle with your approach. But in the race, you can be a bit more aggressive just because there's less engine power from the ERS modes. So the exit is quite important because it makes or breaks your lap time in sector 1 itself. Tight on the left hand side here, it gains you quite a bit of time when you nail the entry here, but you don't want to go over the track limit, as you can see here. And then yeah, flick it right, don't mount the curb but stay close to it on the right. And then on the left hand side, cut as much as you can, and this also again requires a little bit of practice and muscle memory. Cut as much as you can so that you gain some time, as you can see, and it gains you a few millithousandths, but it's milliseconds, few milliseconds, which is important for you throughout the lap. Now DRS will be activated right around here, and it's a long run down into turn number 4 and Lecombe chicane here. Right, bring your car over to the left hand side, avoid the curb, avoid touching the grass too early, because grass on the tires, it's going to mean you'll have less grip. So bring the car over to the curb, but not too early. Make sure once you're past the grass, then you bring it over to the curb, and then you want to brake at the 50-meter board. In qualifying, in the race, you'll be braking right around 60 to 70 meters, just because it's slower on the harder tires, right? So brake down to 4th gear, and then take a little bit off the entry curb here. In qualifying, you can take a lot more like I'm doing. In the race, you can be a little bit more conservative. 4th gear, tuck it in, and then start accelerating as soon as you are at the corner already. Just a little, just gently, you don't have to go 100% throttle here, just 20-30% will be enough. And then a lot more curb on the inside. Now, like I said with the setup earlier, if you increase your ride height, you're going to be able to ride a lot of these curbs quite comfortably. So that's one advantage that you have of slightly higher ride height around here. So you want to take the curb like that, and let's go back, play it back a little bit, as you can see. So let's play this in a sequence of corners here. You want to take as much as you can, maybe half the car actually, not more than that, right? And then flick it to the left, take as much as you can, stay somewhere in the middle of the track, and then accelerate, almost full throttle, or you can even go full throttle briefly up to 5th gear, and then take as much possible inside curb here. As you can see, we are flirting with the track limits around here. And yeah, once you're past the corner, full throttle. Again, you're playing with the track limits on the exit. As you can see, our rear tire is actually off the line here, or somewhat it is actually off the line. Only the front right is touching the track. So it's again touch and go around here. And then keep your car to the left hand side in 7th gear. In the race, you can keep it in 6 because it does not even rev out that much. Again, avoid the grass initially on the entry. We clipped it just a little bit, but I don't think we got grass around here, so that's good. And then you want to brake in a straight line, a little bit on the curb, and then throw the car into the apex here. 4th gear and down to 3rd gear for the corner. Stay tight on the entry. You can U this corner, or you can V the corner, take it like a U shape or a V shape, whichever you prefer. Stay tight, and then let the car run wide on the exit, but you don't want it too wide, sort of like almost to the left hand side, but still a little bit in the middle here. And then bring the car over to the right hand side. As you can see, the shadows are blocking the curb around here, but as soon as you hit this curb on the right hand side, that's where you can use as your reference to brake and downshift to 4th in the race. In qualifying, sometimes you can even take this without braking. So if you get the line correct, it's quite tough, but you can do it. You can take this in 5th without braking. And on the exit, on the entry, you don't want to take too much curb here. You can take this red and yellow curb, but not the green part. That's going to unsettle the car. On the exit, take as much curb as you can to carry all the speed down to the next part. One, stay away from the grass. In last game, you can do some funny shenanigans with that, but you don't really gain time from that. Now, pull on here, it's almost flat out. In some cases, you can take it flat out with a really high downforce setup here, but considering we are on a low downforce setup here, you want to just take a little bit of a lift, just a smidge. So as soon as you are starting the curve on the left hand side, just before you start that, or just as you come across the right hand side, marshal pose. So that's where you turn the car in and downshift, or you can downshift first. You know, it's still revving out in 7 and you can turn in. The options are there for you. Stay tight on the entry and then bring back the car. It will drift wide just for a moment, but bring it back to the left hand side for the quickest run down to the next part, the piff puff chicane. Is it piff puff? I don't know, we just call it the piff puff section. On the left hand side, and then you brake as the curve starts. Qualifying always is the same braking reference here. And then you're trail braking as you're turning, right? So you're braking and turning at the same time. And you can mount quite a bit of this curve here on the entry. We'll open up the left hand corner after this. So take as much as you can, accelerate, and then up to 5th gear. And you don't want to take too much of this curve. As you can see here, we're just about leaving a bit of margin. Taking the green part, it sometimes tend to throw off the car, unsettle the car a little bit. It's a bit RNG sometimes. So either way, you want to accelerate in a straight line, accelerate as much as you can, full throttle, let the car run wide on the exit here. So this time I think we have just enough cornering speed. We don't really have to use the full corner here, but that's okay. And quickly bring back the car over to the left hand side. And in my opinion, these two corners are probably the most important corners after the first corner, because you know it gives you all the momentum that you need down into the last chicane. As you saw in the hot lap, you know, I nailed this part for once in my life, and you know, again about a 10th there. So here you go. You can brake a little bit early here. That's not a problem, because that allows you to carry more speed, momentum into the corner without having to force yourself to slow down, right? So just before the 50-meter mark, right as the curve starts here, you brake down to 4th gear and you just have to tap on the brakes a little bit and then throw the car into the apex. I prefer to avoid the inside curve because it's a bit, you know, as you can see, it's a bit dented, right? It unsettles the car quite a bit on low downforce, so I don't like to take it. Rather, I just prefer to brake a little bit early and carry a more rounded line and carry the speed through the corner. So avoid the curve on the inside, as you can see, and then accelerate as hard as you can. In qualifying, in the race, you'll be just about, you know, managing your turning point and your, you know, before you go full throttle. So it's touch and go here. You can't go full throttle in the race at this point just yet, but you know, right around here already full throttle at some point. So again, play with the track limits, let the car run wide and use all the track that you can. As you can see, we are just about on the line here, and then line up your car as left as possible, as much to the left as possible, to open up the entry to the right hand corner here. So once again, let's just see that from the onboard. You want to turn in quite early here, because you know, the corner tightens up on the exit. So the sooner you turn, the more momentum you carry, but don't steer too much again. So it's a balancing act. You know, you have to turn in early, but you don't want to turn your steering too much to carry as much momentum. And stick to the right hand side immediately after you complete the corner, and then again here stick to the right, and then you can stick to the left hand side just to minimize the track distance. Bring your car over to the right hand side, and it's flat out here. Even in inters it's flat out. In the west it's just a slight lift and downshift to 7th, and then flat, and then bring it home into the last chicane. Bring up the brake bias maybe to 57, 56 if you need it, and then get ready to brake at the 100-meter board, and avoid that grassy area here on the exit, so on the entry here. So you don't want to this is actually cutting it quite close, quite dangerous to, you know, clipping the curb, and you can actually spin your car by locking the race by going on the grass. So you don't want to be doing that exactly, right? So you can take a little bit more margin, be a bit safer, a bit more to the right hand side, and brake in a straight line down to 4th gear, and then down to 3rd gear, down to 2nd gear even if you need for the corner entry here. So we nailed the entry, but I kind of ran wide, accelerated a little too early here, and the car just kind of ran wide here. As you can see, it's not really tight on the entry, and as a result we are tight on the very wide on the exit. So definitely lost probably a good half a tenth or tenth there, but nevertheless accelerate in a straight line coming out of the corner, and keep your steering straight because it will want to oversteer, and you'll be able to correct it if your steering is already straight. And keep a tight line to the right hand side, and the finish line is here, and that is a lap of Spa. Well, I hope this recording actually turns out to be fine, because I don't want to redo this for the third or fourth time, and I can't find any more pace out of this this track already. Probably half a tenth or 1/10, but that's a lot considering my skill issues. So there we go, that is Spa done, and I will see y'all in the next setup. We got a couple more before we actually post up Vegas for next weekend's real life Grand Prix. So yeah, take care everyone, stay safe, and see you soon.